You've got the degree, the photos are posted, and the graduation money is hopefully sitting in your bank account, and maybe you even have a job lined up, which is great. But if you're like me, the first job is never exactly what you want. It's an entry-level position, and if you're lucky, it's actually related to what you studied for the last 4 years. So the question becomes, how do you bridge the gap between where you are and where you ultimately want to be? In other words, how do you turn your lofty ambitions of landing your dream job into something that's real? So many postgrads that I've worked with tend to hit a bit of a lull in their initial career because they've graduated and they're ready to make a big splash to get things started, only to end up feeling a little lost and unsure of how the entry-level job can actually contribute towards their big dream. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to use my Future Self framework to build a 12-month roadmap so that a year from now, you aren't still figuring it out. That means taking this exciting job that you dream about every single day and breaking it down into an achievable plan. We're going to start with an example dream job that I heard recently, and this is a real example in action to work on the F1 Red Bull racing team. Now, full disclosure, I know absolutely nothing about Formula One. If you ask me something about downforce or tire compounds, I had to look that up. I'm going to give you a complete blank stare. So I am not a racing fan, but I tell you that because I want you to see that this framework can apply to literally any job, any dream, and walk you back the entire way. Okay, so we're going to start here on daviddilday.net, my website, and you can access the Future Self framework by either clicking on this button or from the top navigation under Resources. Once you are in the Future Self framework, I want to walk you through quickly on what we're going to do. It's broken down into 4 different phases. The first would be the target identity phase, and this is where we're going to create a very specific vision, what it feels like, what it sounds like to be your future self in 1 to 2 years. From there, we're going to go down into the reverse timeline, or how do we take that big dream, your big ambition, your big goal, and roll that all the way back to see what do I need to do in the next 15 minutes? What's the thing I have to do tomorrow, this week? Those are achievable goals, and that's where we develop this timeline, this roadmap, so that you can get there in a reasonable time frame. Now, after we establish our reverse timeline, we're going to give ourselves some safety nets in the form of excuse breakers. It's very easy to go back into old habits and to not make progress on a daily or weekly basis. So I have some triggers in here, non-negotiables, if-then statements to make sure that you're actually making progress on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis. And then finally, we have phase 4, which is our weekly audit, just to check to make sure that you did everything that you promised yourself that you would do at the beginning of the week. Are you making progress toward your goals? Are you doing everything that you set out in the beginning to reach your dream? So let's start in phase 1. We're going to establish our target identity. What is our vision for the future? And what I have so far is for this F1 Red Bull racing job is to be in the technology campus in England. We can hear the air guns in the bay. I've got my team badge around my neck. I know what the plastic around my neck feels like. I can feel all that. There's some sensory parts of this, and that's really important because if you can imagine what it's going to be like, not just think about the thought of being successful or being on the racing team, what are you wearing? What are you doing? It makes it much more vivid, and it tricks your brain to be able to achieve that and know what success really looks like. Next, we're going to talk about what our identity is and what are we wearing, how do we stand, how do we feel. And again, I know this sounds a little silly, but it's important to visualize what you're doing. So here I'm in business casual attire or pit crew clothing, depending on the job that you want, and I'm very focused. I don't feel like an imposter anymore because I've spent an entire year outworking everyone else. So you can start to develop this clear picture of who we are and who we want to be. Next, we're going to look at what people are saying. What does it sound like to be successful in this new role? So in this specific example, I put in a senior engineer says, your technical assessment was the most thorough we've seen all year. You can put something else in there if you like. Again, going back to this F1 racing gig that we have, we want to hear, glad to have you on the team. We are now successful and we're hearing it from the team that we're on. Lastly, in phase one, we're going to put in what our internal monologue is. How are we feeling today versus how our future self is now thinking? And so what I came up with is this directionless anxiety, this adrift and lost in the wind I feel today is now being replaced by the reality of the work that I'm doing. It is a vivid picture for me. I know what it feels like to be successful for the Red Bull racing team. So now we've typed all of that in. At the very end of this, we're going to click Generate Vision Statement. And this is just going to take everything that you had from the blanks and put them into a nice, concise paragraph with a few bookends. But this gives you a clear picture of what your goal is. What are you trying to achieve? And what does it look like to be the other side of your future self? So now that we have our initial vision statement, we're going to reverse engineer it. You don't just get lucky and find yourself at Red Bull Racing or any other place. You have to build a plan to get there. You're going to plan the work and then work the plan. So if I were a graduate, this is how I would map out my year. The first thing we have to do is to define what our finished build milestone is. And in this case, that's a junior engineer at Red Bull Racing. Now, we need to do something very important. How do we know this is actually done? What's our evidence? Well, in this case, it is a signed contract, and since I'm in the US, I need a work visa to work in the UK. If I'm going to England, I have to first get a signed contract and a UK work visa. So now that we've got our finished build, we're going to continue working it back, and now we're going to say what has to be true 6 months out before I can achieve this junior engineer position. Well, I need to be in on the F1 network. I need to get in somehow. Well, how do I know that that's actually happened? And I'm going to say that I've secured an internship or role with Formula 2 or 3 team to get trackside experience. So now 6 months, or maybe a little longer depending on the role that you want, this is what has to be true in order for me to get to my final goal. So now we're looking at 3 months out, and what I put here is we need to increase our technical knowledge. So 3 months away, what do we need to do? And I'm saying that we've completed 3 complex simulation projects using the software that Red Bull lists in their job descriptions. So now I have a goal in mind. I know that if I'm not fully qualified to be an intern, and they're not just going to give it to me because I love racing, for example, I now have a punch list. I have things to go accomplish in order for me to be qualified to meet this internship criteria. So now it's becoming a little more real, and we're down to the 1 month marker, and I'm going to say that we need to focus our interviews. We don't just need to apply to random places and hope for the best. We need to look at specific companies. So I'm going to make a list of 5 target companies that I personally identified for the job that I want, and also the technical gaps that I have. It's very important to perform your own personal audit. You got to be truthful with yourself. Do you have the skills to be qualified for an internship? And even if you do, it still requires a lot of extra hard work. But this gives us a very direct vision for starting today. I know what I have to do for the next month. Now, after you have all that filled out, you scroll down and it's going to give you a nice roadmap. This is just a visual. I'm a visual person. I like to know what I need to start and where I'm going to finish. This says 1 to 2 years, and of course it says 6 months, 3 months, 1 month. I like to try to come up with a deadline for all of my goals, and I recommend that you do the same. If you don't have a deadline, you're going to push it off till you get back from vacation, or till you feel a little better, or till the weather's nicer. There's always going to be an excuse for why you can't make progress. So this timeline is very important that you stick to it and that you look at the goal in mind. Now we're in phase 3, and this is where your current self is going to start doubting you. It's going to try to get you to quit. We're going to set up some excuse breakers, some anchors to keep you on the right track, because you're going to start doubting whether or not you're qualified or whether this is even possible. People are going to start talking to you and say, I can't believe you're looking at this as your big dream. You got to block all of that out and make sure that you are focused and you are going to make this a foregone conclusion, and this is how we're going to get there. We've all been there. You have the dream and the talent, but somehow you're still standing in the exact same spot that you were 6 months ago. I'm too busy. What if I fail? I'll start tomorrow. I'm just not ready yet. I wrote the Excuse Index to help you break this loop. It's a practical look at how to stop all the overthinking, broken down into simple tasks that you can start right away. If you're ready to finally start real change in your life, check the link in the description below to get your copy of the Excuse Index. Stop the waiting, stop the delays, stop the excuses. The very first thing we're going to do is establish our non-negotiable 15. 15 minutes a day that you're going to spend on an activity that contributes towards your ultimate goal, your dream, every single day without fail. And in this case, for the F1 engineering team, I'm going to say that I'm going to spend 15 minutes researching. I'm going to spend 15 minutes learning. I'm going to do something that moves my skills closer towards my goal. So even though we have a non-negotiable 15 now, it's still going to be really easy for you to go back into old habits. So the if-then shield is going to help shield your brain, shield your mind from the old ways, and we're going to look at the new way of doing things. So for example, if I feel like I'm not from the right school, if I'm not qualified, if I'm not feeling like this is the right role for me, or the goal is too big and I shouldn't have done this anyway, all of these doubts start to creep up, then the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore the big picture and I'm just going to focus on my 15 minutes of work. So you can see then that how this is starting to build up your mental courage, your mental stamina, so that you're not overthinking it. You're not thinking that the goal is too enormous for you to achieve. I can just do my 15 minutes and keep going. So the next if-then shield that I have is just an example. Feel free to put in whatever you want, but I put in, if I get a rejection email from the company that I applied to for this internship, or even in the future, this engineering job, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to immediately retreat and think, well, maybe this is not the place for me. Maybe this is not meant for me. Now, you do have to be honest with yourself. Ask yourself some honest questions about whether or not you did the work. Did you do the 15 minutes of studying every day? Have you achieved everything that is required for the job description? And what else do you need to do? So what I'm going to put in here is, if I get that rejection email, I'm going to follow up with the person at the company and ask them, what could I have done better? That attitude of gratitude, always humbling yourself and thinking, what could I have done better that I didn't do this time that I can do the next time? So now we're coming up into phase 4, and this is all about asking yourself the questions of whether or not you did what you said you were going to do. So the first is, did I hit my non-negotiable? Did I study, in this case, every single day for 15 minutes? If so, great. Next, can I point to one concrete thing that I did that moved me closer to my milestone? It's really important to have something tangible. What did I do this week? If all I did was think about things in my commute to work and my current job, that's not really helping you achieve your goal. You have to put things down on paper, type it out, whatever you need to do to show that you actually made progress. And then finally, you're going to do a visual recheck. How do you feel? Do you feel better than when you started? And also, think about what it's going to be like when you achieve your dream job. What is it going to sound like? What are you going to be wearing? All of these things, although a little silly, very important to recheck and make sure that you're on the right path still. The very last part of this process is to generate your framework. And all this is going to do is take everything that you just put in into all of those blanks, all the thought, everything that you just did, and put it in a nice one-page package that you can either save as a PDF or print out. This is going to be your guidepost, your milestones. How do you hold yourself accountable in order to achieve your ultimate dream and your ultimate goal? The reason I built this framework was to help you take your big ambitions and turn them into realistic goals that you can actually achieve. I don't need to know how the car works in an F1 racing scenario, and I still don't, in order to know that the plan works. In a few minutes, we took a massive, impossible dream and turned it into something that you can accomplish on a Tuesday morning task list. Go to the link below in the description and start building your framework. If you find yourself struggling with self-doubt, time management, perfectionism, or all of the above, welcome to the club. I've gone through all of these ups and downs myself over the last 20 plus years of my career. And so if you're looking for some help there, please check out my book, The Excuse Index. I wrote it as a playbook that helps you remove the versions of your old self that want to quit, or worse, never get started to begin with. I hope you find this framework helpful as you pursue your dreams. Stop doubting yourself, put the work in, let's do this.